All right, welcome back to the KUTV Primetime News on this first day of May. That is none other than the Labor Day celebrations coming about. Now, today we focus on a matter that has come under sharp national scrutiny: gambling, following a 30-day suspension of gambling advertisement by the Betting Control and Licensing Board. Concerns are growing over the normalization of betting as a path to wealth creation, particularly in an economy grappling with high unemployment and economic stress. Now, with the youth increasingly drawn into the gambling web, the stakes, social, economic, and psychological, could not be higher. Joining us to unpack this particular issue is Dr. Fabio Ngachi, a lecturer at Kenyatta University and a researcher on the socio-economic dynamics of gambling. Welcome to the program, Dr. Ngachi.
Thank you, Mr. Malesi.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Right.
And kindly, if we could just jump into it, could you perhaps share to us the link, particularly between underemployment and the rising popularity of gambling within Kenya?
Okay, generally, if you look at the way gambling is marketed and the way, it is projected or presented to the population or to Kenyans, it's actually presented as a means of earning a living. In fact, in Kiswahili, they say wawekezaji. Wawekezaji, those are investors.
Yeah.
So the language, the narrative and the stories around gambling is that this is a means to, out of poverty. This is a means for quick riches, and this is just a way out of your financial problems. And that now creates a huge problem in our society. In fact, because I've been doing research on gambling, and one of the key things that comes out clearly is that, people gamble to make money. They gamble to earn a living. They gamble to, to earn something out of it. It's not recreation. In the Kenyan context, gambling is not recreation. It is not a recreation activity. It is a means of earning a living. So you can see that connection. So if there's someone who doesn't have a job, or if there's someone whose finances are, who is not happy with their finances, then gambling is presented as a way out of that situation.
And perhaps what are the long-term effects, particularly looking at the youth margin with 67%, according to the latest data reports, that they are unemployed? What are the long-term effects that maybe we are looking at, the likely ones, in case the practice continues as is?
It's going to have a serious effect on many young people. And I think it's also important to mention that it's not only unemployed youth who gamble. Like I said, everyone wants money, and gambling is presented as a way of making money. So we even have people who already have some kind of income also gambling. But if the trend continues, gambling has some serious effects on individuals, their families, and even the society at large. So if you look at, generally the trends that we are seeing increasingly many people, especially the young, getting involved in gambling, and this is having a number of effects on them. One, of course, there's loss of money. Every year, gambling companies are recording huge profits. Every year we hear, government has collected billions of shillings. So the industry is doing very well, as far as money is concerned. And of course, this money comes from the gamblers. It's not, so we are getting a huge population of young people losing money. The other issue is psychologically, this has a certain effect. Remember, the cost of gambling is not just the loss of money. There's the loss of time. Analyzing bets, playing, thinking about the outcomes of gambling, all these things have an effect in terms of one, loss of productivity. You realize, for example, when you have jackpots, there are several games, and many people spend a lot of time trying to analyze those games, and that is a loss of time. There is anxiety psychologically. There's anxiety if currently as you're presenting on TV and you had a bet that is running, maybe there's a game that is being played at 9, obviously you're not going to concentrate because you're hoping, your mind is there, maybe this is the game that is going to, bring me a lot of money. So there's a lot of anxiety disorders that we are seeing coming in. There is people getting into depression as a result of losing a lot of money, as a result of being desperate to recover the money that they've lost. To the families, relationships suffer. Money that is meant for family is now used for gambling, is taken by the gambling company. So if someone was to pay rent, that money is not able to pay rent. Someone was to buy food, someone was to pay school fees or whatever, those expenses in the family, they are affected because of gambling. So you can see a breakdown of family relations. Then of course, to the larger community, we are having now a society of gamblers, because if there's a quick way of earning money, then why would I want to work? If there's a certain promise that all I need to do is just place a bet and earn money and some money, then we're going to have a society of gamblers where there's loss of productivity. Young people are not now utilizing their creativity. They're just spending their money hoping for, that big windfall from gambling. So it has some serious implications on our society. So the question to ask ourselves here is, in future, we are seeing a situation where a child goes to the parent and says, I'm hungry, I need food. Then the parent would say, there's a better placed, watch your betty, we see how it goes. Either watch your betty so that you can buy supper, or watch your betty so that you can pay school fees. So you can see how serious this is going to impact our society.
And we call it like we see it, because I'm imagining the way you've put it out, like we call it an investment, kuwekeza. What do you view? Because at where I'm placed, I'm really doubting now the soundness, particularly because looking at Kenya particularly, it's an economy that is on the growing cycle. It's trying to come up. And the financial knowledge is not really out there. So when we call gambling an investment of sorts, what do you think is the impact particularly for the economically vulnerable populations, that these are people who are coming into the financial cycle and their terminology, or the description of an investment, is placing something there and hoping on the wind for things to go their way?
Thank you. I think it's a really serious problem, and I think first I'm happy that finally, I'm seeing these conversations, in the mainstream media. This conversation have been there. To a great extent, I would like to blame the media because the truth be told, the media shapes, the views. The media, influences young people, and the media has played a huge role in using these terminologies and encouraging people to gamble. So like you said, when we call it an investment, then we are telling people that this is a legitimate way of earning a living. Remember, Kenyans, to be fair to Kenyans are people who are hardworking. You go around, you get out of, in your neighborhood, you find people selling things here and there, trying to earn a living. So Kenyans are hardworking people. They're willing to invest, they're willing to, start a business and do something. So when you're telling them that this is a way out, this is another way of investing, then you're misleading them, and you're taking advantage of their desire to earn a living, and then you're misrepresenting that, as something that can actually help them, which of course, at the end of the day, harms them. So what we're going to have, by the way, we're having many cases. Even yesterday I was talking to someone who had given me a call regarding a friend who was suicidal because he had lost about 500,000 through gambling. So you realize that we are having a problem because now we're having a generation of people who believe that all I need to do is to place a bet, and that is a way of earning a living. They wake up in the morning hoping that they will, Arsenal or some miracle will happen for them to earn a living. So ultimately, this is completely misleading, and the media has played a huge role because there are investors there. The media is one of the biggest investors in gambling and encourages in on gambling, and they've really ruined, I have to say, many of our young people.
And when you're looking at that, Dr. Recently we have this 30-day ban on advertisements on gambling coming from the state. Do you view this as an action that will be able to rather stem down gambling that has been prevalent within the country, or is it a step too late? And what do you see as the likely impacts of just stopping the advertisements? Will people stop gambling?
They say the horse has already left the station, but I think it's a step in the right direction, but I highly doubt that gambling, advertisement for gambling will stop. I highly doubt. Probably it will come back. Because remember, I've made some presentations even in Parliament, and where, MPs told me, whatever you're saying here, these submissions you're making, nothing's going to happen, because there are serious interests in this industry. So I'm not sure whether it's going to work, whether it will come back again, but stopping advertising will be a step in the right direction, because if someone does it, the more we keep talking about something being, advertising gambling and telling people join, do this in mainstream media and all that, of course many new people will start joining. So it will be a step in direction, but I'm a bit skeptical whether they will actually stop it, because remember, the media earns a lot of money through it, the advertisements. The media is an investor. The government, I'm not sure whether the government wants gambling to stop, because they pride themselves in taxing, the young people, and they they say, oh, we've collected a lot of money. The government just wants money. If you look at the policies systematically over the years, the policies that the government has been implementing regarding gambling have been largely about taxing, taxing the gamblers and collecting revenue. So I'm not sure whether the government would want their revenue to go down. So it's a really tricky situation, but we hope that serious decisions will be made regarding gambling in this country.
So in a way, it's like you could say we don't know what the government is betting on this matter.
Yes,
and perhaps now moving on, because I imagine a parent or someone who has a young person within their environment, and perhaps through your research, what are the common behavioral changes, psychological changes that would show you that this particular young person is indulging too much in this practice and maybe it's taking a toll on them? What is that you would be out to look out so that you can be able to pinpoint there is an issue here?
Okay, so gambling actually, what happens typically, people don't just get addicted to gambling and get affected by gambling. Like they become disordered gamblers or addicted gamblers. What happens initially, there's some excitement about it, when the person gets in. Then over time, it's just feeling like there's some hope, actually, this is a way I can make money. Then once he loses some money, because ultimately he's going to lose money, there is desperation. So the person is gambling now to kind of try and recoup whatever he has lost. And during that process, the person gets depressed. And of course, now when he realizes that he has lost a lot within a very short time or over a certain period, and then he gets into depression, and that's where you hear people get suicidal. and get into serious psychological problems. Now, if you are a gambler, or you live with someone and you suspect that you could get addicted to gambling, what are some of the telltale signs? One, there is a tendency to borrow money for unexplained reasons. So you realize this person is just having some weird financial problems. Is borrowing money from people, and the way there is no logical explanation. So this person has some financial problems. The other thing you realize is that they rarely talk about their losses. People talk about their wins. You'll find some showing, I see what I've won, but they not tell you that today they tell you they've won 2,000. They not tell you yesterday they lost 50,000. Then there is their relationships deteriorate. They start isolating themselves, because now this person is depressed. So their behavior changes. They look like kind of depressed, and over time you realize that their behavior significantly changes. In fact, if a person is even working, that person stops working, because waiting for money at the end of the month or at the end of the day loses meaning for them, because they're like, I can't recoup what I've lost. So there is a sense of desperation in that person's life, but to a great extent, a good sign is just look at their financial behavior, and you can note that there's a problem there.
And Dr. Harry, it's not the first time we are entering into matters concerning gambling. If I was to use myself as an example, I remember my dad at one time coming home with charity sweepstake cards, where he was scratching to see if things would match and go his way. And it means gambling is not something that is novel currently within the Kenyan ecosystem. It's nothing that is new. But perhaps looking then and looking at the situation right now, do you view a culture shift of sorts between gambling maybe 10 years ago and presently?
Yes, absolutely. There's a huge change. One, remember when your dad was buying charity sweepstake, he had to go to some market somewhere and buy a ticket and wait, I don't know, for some time to see if he has won. But you see, the technology has changed. Gambling is at your fingertips. Now, what's happening? Because many people in Kenya, a lot of gambling that happens in Kenya happens over the phone, either over the phone or over the internet, and many Kenyans have access to that. Now, meaning at any moment, at any time, a person can place a bet. So we have two factors, technology and mobile money. With mobile money, someone can place a bet, quickly gets money from his M-Pesa and sends to the gambling company. Technology makes it accessible. As we speak now, even if the Premier League, for example, the Premier League is not, there's no game. There's a game somewhere in Kazakhstan. There's a game somewhere in Timbuktu being played. And those games are available for the person to bet. The other thing now, we are not even now talking about gambling on the games. We have things like a Vieta now, where instead of waiting for a game to end, why don't you just place your 50 shillings and within 2 seconds, you see whether you've won money or not. So you can see the gambling companies have also become very creative, and they've really put everything at the fingertips of any person who would like to gamble. So that, for example, if in 2 seconds you will have placed your bet, either you will have lost or have won. So that has changed the dynamics. And remember, gambling is a very private activity. I can right now, if I was drinking alcohol, I'll become drunk and you notice maybe the breath or something. But with gambling, you can't know. Someone could be in church and is placing a bet. Someone could be, even you could be reading news right now, and in 2 seconds you place a bet and everything goes on. So you can see there's a shift in technology and of course mobile money. And of course, to a great extent also, the culture and the narrative that has been been perpetuated in our society, especially through the media.
And you've told us about a moment where you had an opportunity to submit your findings even before the various state bodies, that is the National Assembly and so forth. Perhaps you can be able to share with us the recommendations particularly that you made then concerning policy changes that can be able to at least curtail the motion of gambling in the nation, and perhaps what may be new that you have come to realize that would also function in a way of assisting policymakers in being able to at least find a way of moderating or controlling and ensure that we don't lose the social structure that we have due to gambling.
Yeah, so some of the ideas that have talked about in various platforms and even made submissions in Parliament is in Kenya we don't have really gambling regulation. An authority that is in charge of regulating gambling in the country, and not just regulating, but also, conducting research, informing policy, and, representing, focusing on reducing the harms associated with gambling. So, for example, if you look at alcohol, we have NACADA, which is a body mandated to, to take care of issues to do with alcohol and drug abuse. In Kenya, we don't have. By the BCLB, generally only licenses.
It's a license here.
It gives legitimacy to the gambling companies. That's why every time you hear an advert, they say, this is the BCLB license. So BCLB now just provides the license, and that's it. So we need a body that is mandated to really look into the matter. That is one. We need to create awareness. We need to have this conversation. I've had, I'm happy that the media, the mainstream media is now talking about it so that people are aware. Third, the banning of advertisement. I think that should be something that, we don't have, we should not have advertisements for gambling all over the place. I think that is an important thing to do. Then, like I said, with that board, then the government can set aside money for research and outreach activities aimed at, harm reduction, as far as gambling is concerned. And also we have, also counter narratives, talking to people, in terms of that gambling is not an income generating activity. Provide various opportunities for people to see that these are the way that you can earn a living and not through gambling. With that, it's kind of a framework. There's a lot that can be done. There's a lot that can be done to mitigate the harms associated with gambling.
Okay, and maybe Dr. Fabio, as you wrap it up, you can be able to give us your counsel, particularly to the young people who are being lured to the idea of gambling as a way of making that quick dime. Perhaps you can give them a final word as we end our conversation tonight.
All right, thank you. I think for the person who is excited or is considering gambling or is already involved in gambling, what I would say is that gambling at the end of there's a saying that the house always wins. Gambling will make you forget about really using your creativity and your energies to earn a living legitimately. Gambling is not a means of earning a living. It is not an investment. So I would ultimately, encourage young people to look at gambling as something that has been presented by society to siphon money from them. The gambling companies are the ones who gain from this. So if you can avoid it, by all means, please do. Or at least, just know that this activity is not going to make you rich. And if you're going to make money, then you have to make it in the legitimate way. If you've already lost money, accept that you've lost money and you'll never recoup that. Come to terms that money, you'll never get it back. Forget about it, start afresh, and stop chasing whatever it is that you've lost, because the more you keep chasing, the more you keep digging that hole that you're already in, and it's going to create a lot of problems for you. So that is what I would encourage. But also, we offer professional services. You know, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to other psychologists so that you can get psychological help to deal with the addiction, because like any other addiction, gambling is also a mental health disorder that can also be treated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fabio Ngachi, for your insights. Particularly, I'm sure anyone who has an ear, anyone who has been keen to go through this conversation, and anyone who would go through this conversation in future will get some insights, some guidance that will be quite relevant in salvaging them from being the victims, particularly of gambling in the country. And something that is very clear, as you put it, is the house always wins. Let it be your house that wins and not the one that loses. We take a short break.